If you, the viewer, were forced to participate in a prisoner's death game where 10 death row prisoners are forced to fight for freedom on live television, would you know how to survive? In this video, we're going to be breaking down the 2007 film The Condemned and seeing if the characters could have made better decisions to survive the death game. So, without further ado, let's get started. Our movie begins at a Belarus prison. Here we see a prison guard and a cameraman walking side by side. Together, they approach a cell that has a man sitting inside of it. They then shove 3 other men inside of the cell and instruct them to fight the man sitting down. A fight ensues, which results in the man that was sitting down killing all 3 of the prisoners that were instructed to fight him. All this time, there were cameras recording him, and a producer who was watching the live stream says he wants this man for the show. So they go to the warden and bribe him with a large sum of money to let the prisoner go and join the show. The warden ends up agreeing, and we then move to an unnamed island in the Pacific where cameras and other film equipment are being set up in anticipation for the show. Everything seems to be going smoothly until the producer of the show is informed that one of his more notable prisoners was shot and killed. He doesn't just want any replacement though.
I don't want a fucking Guatemalan. I already got 2 Mexicans. Look, you see here? This is the Arab world. If they don't have anybody to cheer for, they don't log on.
Okay, I think it's safe to say he really does want an Arab replacement. So our film then takes us to a Middle Eastern prison where we see a large man taking a piss into a bucket and somehow missing half of it. The guards once again start selecting prisoners to fight him to show the producers his strength. However, this time the prisoner is knocked out by an American, who is then selected by the producer to be the final contestant of the show. We're then shown a hangar where all the contestants get a few seconds to interact, and we learn a bit about their personalities. However, everyone quickly goes quiet when the rules are announced.
On your ankle, you all have a rig, packed with 20 ounces of plastic explosive. In exactly 30 hours from now, that plastic explosive will do what it does best. You want that rig removed from your ankle. Simply be the sole survivor in 30 hours from now.
So this can all be summarized to be a Hunger Game for prisoners instead of little kids. Okay, so if I were in the preparation stage, I would just shut the fuck up and not speak unless spoken to. Prisoners are known to hold grudges or be a little bit mentally unstable, so it's best not to accidentally offend anyone and make enemies. When the game officially starts, all the prisoners get loaded up into helicopters and they're given their key to their chains via something to bite on, and then thrown off the plane at random locations in the ocean. All of them except for this dude, who didn't get so lucky. You know, I'm shocked to say those pilots' aim are even worse than that Muslim dude peeing from earlier. Our main character, Jack Conrad, decides it's a good idea to attack the person giving him the keys, so he's thrown off the plane without keys to his handcuffs. Okay, I don't know if I need to do much explaining, but attacking the person who's giving you the keys to your handcuffs is probably not a good idea, because you'll be at such a disadvantage if you can't run or attack properly. Honestly though, being dropped directly onto the island instead of the water would be a huge advantage, because you can wait on the shore and ambush anyone who's exhausted from the swim. And this is something that Jack actually does. When he sees the Mexican dude hop out of the water, he immediately pins him to a wall. But then he has a change of heart when he finds out the Mexican dude also has a wife who's in the game and that he just wants to protect her, so Jack lets him go. The Mexican dude returns the favor by giving Jack the keys to his handcuffs. Okay, I know a lot of you expect me to say just kill the fucker, but I think having one ally is actually more important than eliminating one enemy. Meanwhile, around the island, prisoners are starting to make it to shore, including that Mexican dude's wife, who's attacked by a Polish dude that pins her down and attempts to rape her. However, he quickly figures out that women on death row are just as deadly as the men, as she pulls a sharp stick out of the ground and stabs it into his neck, and then pulls the tag out of his bomb, which blows him up. And somehow, the producers are very excited to be watching this. Okay, so I know this girl technically won this 1v1, but I think she just got really lucky. Biologically, women just aren't as strong as men, so it's unlikely they'll win in a 1v1 fight. So if I were one of the weaker contestants, I would head inland instead of wandering around in the beach in plain view of everyone waiting to get attacked. The movie then cuts over to the black American who's been walking through the jungle. He realizes there's cameras around him and starts destroying them. If I were in this situation, I would do the same thing. Seeing there isn't a penalty, you might as well fuck over the people that force you to play the game anyways and make it so they can't make money off the show. The black guy then sees a helicopter fly overhead and it drops off a supply kit. Inside, there's a knife and some water. Before the dude can enjoy too many sips of his newfound fresh water, he's confronted by the Japanese dude, who also saw the supply drop, and they get into a fight. The black dude somehow loses the fight despite having a knife and is able to run away. The Japanese dude chases after, but only finds the Australian dude sitting calmly eating a fruit. I know this movie technically says he's British, but there's just no fucking way he's British with an accent like that.
Lovely day, don't you think?
Anyway, the Australian dude offers to team up with the Japanese dude so they can hunt down the remaining prisoners. But this is a risky move since the Japanese dude doesn't know a lick of English, so if there's a misunderstanding, they could just fight and kill each other. But eventually in the movie, he's able to understand the British dude and the two team up. The most effective hunting strategy I could think of for these two to dispatch as many people as possible is to follow the cameras around. We can see that there's moving cameras that follow all the contestants in order to get cool shots. So all these have to do is follow the cameras until they find someone and then kill them 1v2. Meanwhile, on the other side of the jungle, our main character Jack runs into a very, very big problem. These two very large men get into a bit of a scuffle that ends in Jack getting the main character buff and pulling this dude's pin, sending him tumbling off a cliff and exploding. We then switch point of views once again to the Mexican dude who has now finally found his wife. They start making out, but then the creepy Australian dude finds them. In order to protect his wife, the Mexican dude engages in a fight with the Australian guy. Just as the Mexican dude is about to win, however, the Japanese dude distracts him, allowing the Australian guy a chance to get a stick and break his leg. They chain the Mexican dude to a tree and then kill his wife. Okay, so there's a few ways I think the couple could have avoided their fate. If they had just waited till the coast was clear before making out, they would have had a chance to escape. Also, the husband could have pulled the tag on his own bomb when he was chained near the Australian guy and blow them both up. This would give his wife a chance to escape. We then see the black dude who's still running around in the jungle and he gets attacked by the chick from the beach. Because he's a good person, he doesn't actually want to kill her and decides to trust her. Later in the night, the two seem to be hitting it off, giving each other massages and such. However, this was just a ploy by the girl to get yet another kill, as she runs off with a tag from the black dude's bomb, blowing him up and eliminating yet another opponent. Okay, I think it goes without saying you aren't competing against Karen from next door. Instead, you're competing against people who are on death row and have the most questionable moral compasses on the planet, and this is their last chance at life. Safe to say, don't trust anyone. The movie then cuts to the FBI office in the United States, who are investigating and try to figure out where the show is taking place so they can shut it down. However, someone recognizes Jack, who used to be a US-sanctioned hitman, and it turns out in order to not rat out his country, he was put on death row in the Middle East, which is why he's in this game in the first place. That's some interesting backstory, but in present time, Jack found the Mexican dude who's severely depressed that his wife died, and together they travel across the island. The Mexican dude obviously wants revenge, but things are rather difficult considering he's a cripple and the Australian Japanese dudes both got a supply drop full of weapons. Recognizing this, the Mexican tells Jack to go ahead because he knows he can't keep up. Jack goes across a camera wire and the TV producers can't see where he's going because earlier he put a metal cover over his GPS system. He wanted to cover his tracks because he was headed to the producer's headquarters. Here, he subdues a guard and enters the communication tower where he makes a phone call to his wife whom he hasn't seen in many years. He then tells her the location of the island so that she can send help. However, just as he finishes the phone call, he's shot at by guards and is forced to jump off the communication tower and he lands on his back. Okay, it doesn't take special forces training to know that when you jump off a tall structure, it's probably best not to land directly on your spine. For all you know, you could end up like this guy if there was a rock underneath you. By the time Jack makes it to the Mexican, he's already been found by the Australian and the Japanese guy and they're torturing him to death. At the end of the night, the two burn him alive and it's officially game on for Jack. In the morning, Jack stalks the two to a nearby abandoned temple and he is directly underneath them. He then pulls out a metal gate to use as a weapon. However, he's so close to them, it's unrealistic they didn't hear anything. There are so many places Jack could have gotten a weapon. Why did he have to wait to be right next to these two before getting one? Jack then attacks the Japanese dude, where he's able to completely destroy him while his entire hometown watches. But before the killing blow, the Australian guy starts shooting arrows and corners Jack inside a small building. Inside the small building, the girl from earlier was waiting inside and ambushes Jack. However, Jack is able to turn her into a meat shield, which blocks an arrow from the Australian dude. There's some even more bad news for Jack as the Japanese dude starts throwing Molotovs into the house. And this is an issue because inside there are old World War II explosives. Luckily, Jack is able to escape through a secret tunnel and survives the explosion. The two villains, believing that they are now the last two standing, turn against each other and start fighting for what they believe is to be the last one standing. But before they can kill each other, Jack reveals himself. I'm not sure why Jack couldn't have just waited for one of them to die before stepping in, making it a much easier fight, but he did what he did. Cause now he has to fight a 1v2, which he handles rather easily as he's much superior at hand-to-hand combat because because of his special forces training. He's able to kill the Japanese dude, but the Australian dude runs away and jumps into a waterfall, where Jack is forced to follow. Here the game's final supply drop falls and the Australian dude gets there first and reveals that he now has a shotgun. But he must have not used guns very often because he shoots the rock that Jack is hiding behind so much when he literally could have just walked around the rock and shot Jack because he's the only one with a gun. Since he shot so many times he ran out of bullets, Jack is able to just walk away from the rock while he reloads. The two get into one final fight that Jack loses, causing him to tumble into the river below while getting shot at, and that he dies. Back at the station, the Australian is brought to the producer, and it's revealed the game was rigged in his favor so he could win the entire time, hence all the lucky supply drops, but the producer refuses to give him the share of money that was promised. This angers the Australian so much that he kills the guard and chases after the producer into the film studio. However, the producer already left, so out of anger, the Australian starts shooting everyone inside. But in a big plot twist, it turns out that Jack never actually got hit by a single one of the bullets, and he comes inside and executes the Australian dude. Moments later, Jack catches up to the producer who is fleeing by helicopter. He's able to toss one of the ankle monitors into the helicopter just in time, blowing up the producer. And the movie ends on a very wholesome note of Jack returning home to greet his wife. But now that you say it, doesn't Jack look a tiny bit like Johnny Sins? Well, now you know how to beat the prisoner death game from The Condemned. So if you ever get drawn into a death royale, you will now win. You can thank me ahead of time by liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment for the algorithm. I truly appreciate all the support on my recent videos, so thank you all so much for sticking by me. And with that being said, I hope you all have a great day. This is Andrew from Obsessive Films signing out.